So there we go. Thank you, Keith, for being here. You all know kind of who Keith is because he's quite present at LinkedIn. But I would like to tell you, I would like you to tell us a bit more about you and pRxEngage, and what does pRxEngage stand for?
Sure. So I am a father of 2 daughters, a husband with 1. I think she's happily married, but we'll see. And I think that is who I am first, and then obviously the work flows after that. But from a work perspective, I'm a scientist by training back in the day. I come from a family of doctors. Always thought I was going to become a doctor until I spent a couple of weeks working in a London hospital, and that put me off for life. So trained as a scientist, but I've always had an interest in clinical trials. I lost a friend very early on in my life at 11 to sickle cell disease, and it just didn't sit right with me. It didn't square, and science made sense. And dialing forward, I've worked in clinical research now in human clinical trials for over 20 years. I've been fortunate enough to work on a number of compounds that have gone to market and are still on the market and are making a difference, and a number of other compounds where the drug didn't make it to market, but we did make a difference to people's lives at times. pRxEngage is, in essence, the way in which I look at engagement, but now translated into a tech tool. And where the name came from, pRx is the shorthand for prescription, and engage is obvious. We need to engage with each other. And so I see the prescription for empowered clinical trials, it's engagement. So that's really where the name comes from.
When you say you were working with clinical trials for 20 years, what exactly were you working on? Were you always doing what you do now, or what else?
Yeah, so over the 20 odd years, I first started as an academic researcher, so worked on interventional clinical trials, but as a researcher in a research site within a large London teaching hospital, and that gave me my first taste of what clinical trials were. And then I had the opportunity to join in London, a clinical research organization with in-bed facilities, and I was there for over 20 years. Had an amazing time, learned an enormous amount, and in that time served as director of operations, commercial director, but I always overlaid the patient engagement and enrollment piece. That was always part of everything I did. So I always oversaw that team. And in between, it was lots of problem solving and fixing and so on.
So you weren't actually working actively with the patient?
Oh yeah, I was working.
Yes.
Yeah, actively with the patients. For me, I think it's always important that you understand the people that you're working with, and that's not just the people that work within your organization or your sponsors. It's understanding the people that put themselves forward for clinical trials. I work with both healthy and patient populations, and the rationale for getting involved in trials is very different, depending on the group and even depending on therapeutics. But for me, it's a matter of understanding the people, what their motivations were, what their fears were, and then helping work with them through that. So I was actively engaging with patients.
Perfect. Thank you. Then we have kind of an idea. How did you then make the move to pRxEngage? Was that kind of a side gig in the beginning, or did you start right into it?
I always thought there was a need for a platform that we've developed, and but I didn't really do anything about it. I've got hypertension. I've also got high cholesterol, so I'm on medication. I'm a patient, but a patient that functions as if nothing was different. And then it was at the back end of 2023, just did a routine blood test, and had a raised PSA. Didn't think too much of it, but repeated this a month later. It was raised again. In fact, it was higher. And the GP said, well, let's just do an MRI just to check. Had the MRI, and before the doctor could tell me what it was, I could see in his eyes he wasn't going to deliver great news. So he told me at the time, there is a black spot. We believe it's prostate cancer. And then my whole world just like opened up. And it was like, okay, I'll be fine because prostate cancer is treatable and there's a lot of treatments out there. And I started looking into it, and I wasn't particularly comfortable with some of the side effects or some of the existing therapies. Equally, I was waiting for a biopsy to confirm the diagnosis and so on. So I thought, well, let me use the time wisely. I looked for clinical trials, did exactly what everyone else does, type into Google, go to clinicaltrials.gov, a tool that I'd used through my career, but now was looking at it through a different lens, through patients' eyes. And I found it quite taxing and and overly complicated. I thought, if I'm struggling, and I've been working in this industry for a while, and I won't be a stupid person, then how must other people feel? So I thought, let me bank this for now. I will come back to this, but let me get right and move on. So that instantly put me off taking part in the trial because it was so vague. Fortunately, the diagnosis came back as negative. So actually I had prostatitis, which mimics prostate cancer in its presentation and raised PSA and so on. But it gave me then the impetus to do, rather than bank the idea, start working on it. So I spoke with my partners at the time. I thought it was time to do something new, wow myself out of the previous company, and started working on this. And the first thing I did was speak to patients as to what other patients would like if a platform like this existed. Also looked at what was on the market. There were multiple tools out there, but bearing in mind I'd worked in the space for 20 years and I do keep up to date, I wasn't overly aware. So if I wasn't aware and I work in the space, what chance did patients have?
Yeah, absolutely understandable. Just a quick question from Eva. She's asking what research topics you were working with.
In terms of conditions so it was predominantly cardiovascular, metabolic, and various rare diseases. And this was anything from interventional small molecule to monoclonals, and then into siRNAs and gene editing therapies. Does that answer the question?
I think so. If not ever, then just write something in the chat. I would like to get to the next question. Thank you first of all, thank you for the explanation and also for telling us your story. I'm happy it was just the prostatitis.
Okay, so
yeah, I get that. But I can imagine that you really felt the fear also, and I believe that things in life always happen for a reason, and without this experience, you wouldn't have what you have now. So, and you help a lot of people with that. I'm sure about that. So, thanks to your fear and your shocking moments, you can help a lot of other people now.
I hope so.
At least we hope that.
Yes.
Now I would like to know how you do that. How do you find the right fit for a study and a participant?
Okay. So as an organization, we are a melting pot of technical computer engineers, people that work or have worked in the delivery of clinical trials from the pharma side, patients, and those that have worked in the community as well as researchers. And finding the right fit is, if you said who would be a good fit for a clinical trial, the most obvious answer that people give is, well, we'd look at their medical history, and then that will determine whether or not they're a good medical fit. And that's true. You do need to fit medically, but that's only part of the equation as far as I'm concerned. And for me, medical fit gets you to the hello, but it's the behavioral fit that actually takes you through the door and sees you through the journey. And we look at, I'm not a psychologist, or I'm not trained in it, but it's always fascinated me, and as has behavioral science, and the way in which we interact with each other, the way in which we look at problems, we look at decisions we have to make, that impacts our day-to-day life. Whether I go and have a fast food meal later tonight rather than having a healthy meal will be my decisional conflict over, well, I didn't need it, but actually it tastes good. And we'll see which one wins later. So what we looked at was, in terms of taking a clinical trial, I can tell you or suggest to you to look at this trial, but ultimately the person that's going to take you through that trial is you, and maybe your family will have a say in that. And so we look at one particular aspect of behavioral science, self-determination theory, which looks at awareness, competency, and relatability. And that's how we look at whether or not a trial is both a good medical fit and a good behavioral fit for you. We all lead lives. Most people do not allow their condition to define them, even when it is an acute or life-threatening or terminal condition. People want more than that, and you are not defined by your medical history. So the right fit takes into account the medical side, but it also takes into account, can you live with the decision you make to take part in this trial? Can your family? Do you have the support? Can you see this through to the end? Can you put up with the rigors of what a clinical trial is? That's mental fitness.
And how do you cope with that? Like, how do you have calls with every patient/participant? How do I understand the working process behind that?
So genuinely, I would love to. And in fact, the best bits of my week are when I do get to speak to patients and understand where they are on their journey. And I would love to speak to everyone, but it's physically not possible. So the best alternative that I can think of is the platform that we've developed, which is about slowly layering in the education to patients. So for me, and I can thank my colleague Jeff for him defining this perfectly, it's the 3 E's, which are engagement, education, and empowerment. And the way that we do that is we engage through a variety of channels, whether it be social media, community groups, clinicians, and so on. Engaging patients in, there are options out there for you. And then it's about educating those patients. And it's not necessarily educating them straight out, this is a trial, this is what's going to happen, this is what you should do. In some cases, you actually need to educate people what a clinical trial is before you even consider talking about a trial. So we do that. And the next step may be educating patients about the type of medication, not the medication itself. And so it's that slow layering in of education, which keeps the patient engaged, helps the patient walk down that journey. And once a patient feels comfortable that they have enough knowledge to take that next step, the next step, in our opinion, is to determine your suitability for that trial. Because just because a doctor tells you you're medically suitable doesn't mean, as I said, doesn't mean you're necessarily overall suitable. And so we look at 3 assessments. The first one we call Suitability Sync, which looks at self-reported medical suitability. Now, that's not EHR derived, but you as a person are typically going to be very honest with yourself. And if you're not, you're fooling no one but yourself as to your medical suitability. So we take the inclusion-exclusion criteria from protocols, and we will create a bespoke 8 to 15 question assessment for patients to complete, understanding that not every patient is a scientist or a clinician. And so the questions are chosen. We use AI to help us build this, but the questions are developed to allow a patient to give a definitive response, a yes or a no. And with that, we build out a score. We do have an I don't know as an option, just so the patient can move through the process, but you're looking for that definitive answer. And we weight each of the answers depending on if it's an inclusion or an exclusion criteria, if it's a hardline exclusion, or if it's something that, it could be a transient event like a raised ALT, for example, so that the patient ends up with a score, a percentage score that tells them, based on the information they're presenting, and we are expecting a patient to be honest with themselves. This is not for anyone else, it's for themselves. This is how suitable you likely are for the study. And the thing I should have mentioned is we made this a mobile first, a web application and a mobile first application, because one of the most private things that we do these days is interact with our mobile phone. And that's probably one of the places we're probably our most honest. And so that built into the psychology piece of it. But then we start to look at the behavioral insights. So we look at something we call SURE score, which is an adaptation of the decisional conflict scale. We all have conflict in whatever we do, but we, in some cases, have more conflict than others. And so this tool helps you determine how conflicted you are or not, as hopefully, or how sure you are about participating in a trial. And then we look at retention predictability, again, through a short battery that of questions that looks at everyday tasks to help us understand whether or not you would be suitable. We're working on one more proprietary test that is in development now, which I'm really excited about, that will look at mental fitness. So more of that to come. But ultimately, these 3 scores now will say, you are X percentage medically suitable, you are X% sure of taking part in this trial, and you are X% likely to see this trial through to the end. That's the relatability piece. You're relating the trial now to your life. And therefore, the next and final step from our perspective, or as to where we are in this journey, is to provide the ability for a patient to automate or directly connect with the site, not faff around looking for email addresses or having to find telephone numbers, but simply take that patient through the journey in which an email is written for them, ensuring that there is no information in there that shouldn't be. So we are GDPR and HIPAA compliant, and so on. And by clicking hit send on the email that goes out of the system, it goes directly to the research site chosen by the system, either one closest to the patient, and now you start this connection. But you're starting connection not on a base level, but on an elevated level, where the site now knows this is a motivated and likely suitable patient. The patient knows that more about the site because we provide information to the patient. It happens instantly, and that instant connection typically leads to a prompter turnaround of the site getting in touch with the patient. But if the site doesn't, we do have tools to help nudge them along, and we provide the patient with the contact details of the person to reach out to if the site doesn't come back within the prescribed time.
Perfect. Now, just I, as a patient, I'm looking for a study. Will I find you on Google? How do I find you? How do I get into contact with you?
So you'll find us on Google. So you can type in pRxEngage, will turn up. It takes a while to get there in terms of SEO and so on, and we are very much about organic growth. We will do some paid advertising in order to make us more prominent, but we use social media channels. You may have seen me cycling around talking about clinical trials. This is, again, just to make an everyday task relatable, and then talk about something that is probably a bit unfamiliar. Or we've got a great team who go out into the general population and just do surveys and ask silly questions about who you date or whatever. It's just about finding ways to connect with people on different levels. Then I'm obnoxiously loud on LinkedIn, so I apologize to everyone for that. But I do feel like I've got a lot to say. And then we work very closely with a number of community groups and charities and foundations. We've got a brilliant technical team, and they've built this amazing, for want of a better word, trial finder widget that can embed on community sites without causing any challenges to the community groups in terms of security. But it allows the patient to search for the trial within that native page and find a trial within that native page. And we can lock this widget down so it's specific to the particular conditions, or we can open it up as necessary. And we've seen a number of patients starting to utilize this on the various community groups that we work with. And I'm pleased to say we're seeing patients now moving from that initial look on those sites through our platform, and a few have now actually gone on to study. Because considering before May the 20th, this thing didn't exist in terms of people's views. So I'm happy with where we're getting to, but there's still an enormous amount to do.
Yeah, I see you on Facebook. I saw that random questions around. And yeah, on LinkedIn, obviously, but the patients won't hang around on LinkedIn. So I have the same approach. I'm thinking, how do I reach the people I actually want to reach? And trying to explore Facebook and Instagram, because I saw, especially on Instagram, there's a kind of a lot of clinical trial groups there. Anyway, you are also, oh, wait, Lorraine is writing something.
Thank you, Lorraine.
The way you use LinkedIn or some, yeah, well, you see that too, right?
I appreciate that. Just on that, I think there's too many cases, and I used to do this because I never used to use LinkedIn, where you worry about, well, what am I saying, and am I going to offend this one? Am I going to offend? You don't need to be controversial. You just need to be authentic. And if people don't want to read me, skip past it. But I'm going to say it anyway, because I know that there are people that find it interesting. And I've made some unbelievable connections in the last year alone. And I'm not talking about just connections with people in biotech and pharma and yourself. I mean, we met through LinkedIn and various others. I'm talking about patients who I've had the honor of walking that journey with a number of these patients, one of which, was a guy that I've become quite close to. We've never met in person, but we are going to at the end of this month. And his son is now on a clinical trial for a rare disease. And, he just needed a bit of help. So my one post seemed to hit the mark. We then started talking, and, I've learned more from him than he's learned from me. He just doesn't realize it. Yeah,
that's what I meant. You also before you, like with your diagnosis, but also with the people you meet. You all meet the people like Noor and Mark. And actually the bicycle post that caught my attention. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Do you remember? I was like, oh, that's a really cool approach to. It's something different. I like that a lot.
Now I can't take credit. I work with this amazing marketing team, and they said, Keith, can we get you? Because I spoke to them one day. I had a meeting with them, and I was cycling. They said, well, would you do this and cycle around London and talk about trials? I said, it's nonsense. No one will watch that. But actually, people do watch it, and I do get those direct requests. Where are you cycling next? Next week I'm in Amsterdam, so I'm going to try it a bit there. Yeah,
I love that approach. I have a few questions, so we should get going. I heard, or you said that you were working at the Ethics Committee. I would like to know more about that. What are you doing there, and how regularly?
Yeah, so I joined an ethics committee. It must be coming up to 10 years ago now. And this actually was based on a dinner conversation with a colleague who worked for a pharma company in Switzerland. And we were both saying, well, it would be interesting to join. And I then followed through. I did find it interesting, started to engage with the studies. It's good to see other things and other studies and the way people approach things. Then was promoted promoted to vice chair of the committee, and then our chair had come to the end of his term a couple of years ago, and I applied to chair the committee that I'm currently chair of, the Fulham committee. So we meet on a monthly basis. We've got a number of lay and expert members, and these are always very robust, interesting meetings. In essence, we are getting in research applications, both academic and industry, those involving the MHRA and those not. And in fact, we had a meeting yesterday. We meet monthly, and then there are 2 subcommittee meetings during the month. So it is a lot of work, and you don't get paid for your work on the ethics committee, although a small stipend is given to ethics chairs. But we have the option to donate that to charity, so I donate it. That amount of money will help someone more than it would make a difference to me. And that's not to be arrogant, but it's just it's one way of giving back. And my role as an ethics chair is to guide and signpost, similar to what we do with pRxEngage, but not to educate. And so often it'll come up in meetings where one of our committee members doesn't quite understand something, or I can see we're going off track. And so I will use my experience in that regard. But equally, this committee is an amazing group of people made up of really clever people, and I don't mean clever as in just E=mc² clever, but have lived life and see things in ways that I don't. And so we all connect on different things. And something as small as and that I never thought about, our one member always asks is, when a device is involved at home, well, who pays to charge and maintain that device? And I've flippantly the first time said, well, I mean, how much can it be? And they said, well, if someone's living check to check and to a very tight budget, now having to charge another mobile phone or a bigger device or whatever it happens to be may actually have an impact. So who covers that? And so it's that kind of thinking that makes you think differently. And then you also meet amazing researchers along the way who are doing some really cool stuff. And it's about helping.
Awesome. Do you then meet online, I guess, if you have several partners?
So so pre-COVID, we met in person. And since COVID, we have met online. The positive is it allows us to be more efficient. The negative is we lose that sense of community. And it is a shame. And I kind of broke cover a couple of years ago and had a face-to-face meeting, although we're not supposed to, and got into trouble. But we do, the HRA, that's the Health Research Authority, who oversees the research ethics committees, do a brilliant job of bringing us all together face-to-face at various times in the year, whether it's be the chairs for training or all committee members for the National Ethics Day. And there's a lot of training and support given being part of an ethics committee. So if you're looking to develop your skills and you really want to see how people do things differently and make a contribution to society, ethics committees are definitely something I'd consider.
How many people are in such a committee? How can I?
So we've got about 15 members in our committee. There's 82 committees in the UK. Yeah. So there are meetings going on. I mean, every day of the month. So you can always find the right committee for you. And each committee is flagged for different studies, so that you go to an expert committee for, say, gene therapies, or a committee for pediatric studies. So they're familiar with working with those types of studies.
All right. Well, thank you. Then I have kind of an idea of what you're doing there. Now, patient voice, we hear that all the time. I don't know, at least I do. I see it and hear it everywhere. And when I was in France 2 weeks ago at the MedTranslate, it was also like a red thread. I want to know, how do you make sure that the patient voice gets louder, that it gets heard by the stakeholders, by those who are supposed to hear it? And I see your posts, you're very engaged in educating. I mean, you said that also. Do you feel it makes a difference?
I think it does. because I try and be balanced as well. The way I see it, we are patients, biotech and pharma, research sites, community groups. We're all part of an interconnected network where not one group is more significant than the other, although each tries to assert their dominance. What I see a lot of is a them versus us approach. And if I come at you as a patient and say, oh, I don't like what you've been doing, pharma, as pharma, you go on the defensive and you start to shut down a little bit. Equally, if I'm a pharma company and I say to you, this is what you need to do and this is how you'll do it to a patient, they will shut down. So it's about being louder, but saying the right thing, and being considered in your approach and being willing to listen. It's something someone taught me. So this is not a term I coined, but you know, we look at our relationships in a transactional manner, which we shouldn't do. We should be looking at this, in my opinion, as an ongoing arrangement. Typically, biotech and pharma will come to a group, a patient group, whatever it happens to be, whether that be the community or the patients themselves. We have a trial, come in and take part in our trial. And then the patient's views, well, where have you been for the last 2 years where I needed information and support? So then the finger wagging starts, and then the defensiveness comes in. And I had the opportunity to speak at a patient meeting, at the PBC Foundation patient meeting just about a month ago, and they are an amazing foundation for primary biliary cholangitis. It is probably one of the purest forms that I've seen of bringing together patients, community leaders, community groups, researchers, and biotech and pharma, all in a room, all working as symbiotically as I think you can get. So I use them often as a reference tool, but ensuring that there's none of this finger pointing. And I said to the patients, that was the group I was speaking to last, people don't get into biotech and pharma to be nasty or for the wrong reason. Typically we get into it because we have a passion for science or innovation, or someone in our life has been impacted. That's why I got into this. And we go into an industry where you are more likely to fail than you are to succeed. Most drugs don't make it to market. In fact, last year, I think 14% of studies completed with all the that we had asked to, or that we had intended to enroll. You are set up for failure. So to then have this put on you a bit more, it makes you push back. So how do you make sure the patient voice gets across? That patient voice needs to be balanced. It needs to express what the challenges are, but then provide actionable insights and potential solutions as to how we can bridge the gap and how we can get there the right way. If you go in with that collaborative mindset, the other stakeholders will collaborate with you.
I mean, that's some basic communication skill everybody should know, actually, but we all are human beings with emotions, and the defensive part is, I mean, also in everyday life, one of the most interesting parts, I think, when it comes to communication, because you are so fast, like, oh no, okay, no, I'm not doing that. I just had a discussion with my godson just before we called, where I had just like that. Okay, he just got into defensive mode, maybe.
But we all do. I do it. I do it all the time with my team as well. It's like I will say something, go, oh, Keith, just quickly. There's not a criticism, but and then I start to get defensive to try and justify and so on. So, own your. You can finish the rest of the sentence. I won't swear on.
No, it's okay. I mean, I love that approach, and it's very good that you're actually also saying patient voice, yes, but in the right tone. And also nice to hear the other side, that what you said about failure and frustration or frustrating moments when you are a scientist. I had I talked to my husband's parents the other day, and we talked about cancer. And they said, yeah, it's getting more and more, but it seems like nobody's doing anything against it. And I'm like, I'm completely on the other side. I'm like, you know how many studies there are, and of course it's not an overnight success. And yeah, so I tried to educate them when it came to that. And but it was interesting how they see it. It was so interesting that they feel like nobody's doing anything against it. You just hear all those cancer patients everywhere, but I do think that clinical trials are not as prominent in people's minds as they could be.
Totally agree with you. And I think part of that is you had a conversation and you heard that, and it's now what you do with that. How do you now change the narrative to say, well, actually, there are other options? And to what you said, clinical trials are not as prominent. I'm a huge advocate that when you are considering a therapy, you look at first-line treatments or standard of care alongside clinical trials, because that allows you to make a truly informed decision as to whether or not to participate in the trial. If you're waiting until there is no option, it is not really an informed decision. It is a decision out of necessity.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. But I think that at least the doctors I worked with, it wasn't a thing, to tell people, you have the option as well. But yeah, let's get going because we have only 15 minutes left. I'm sure we can make another call because we have a lot to talk about. I would really like to say, you're claiming you use AI. You said that before too. I would like to know how you mix that with your human approach, that you're actually saying, I want to be as human as possible. And we all know you like to talk to patients. And but how do you find the balance?
Okay, so the balance is, I said early on, we've got brilliant people in different places coming from different angles. And a big shout out to Ethan and Charlie, who make up the foundation of our tech team. Charlie, as our CTO, has built a platform that is scalable, that is responsive, that allows for the behavioral insights that we wish to capture, that is constantly being iterated. And we're using AI in that sense to create the study summaries. We use AI to inform the suitability, medical suitability assessments from the tools, from the inclusion-exclusion criteria. And then also, I mean, he's done some insanely clever stuff to make our search that much faster, that much more receptive, that much easier for patients. Ultimately, our goal, and this is something I'd learned from Google, and we are nothing like Google yet, was our job is to get patients to where they need to be off our site as quickly as possible. It's come onto our platform, find your study, or find a study, find your study, and then move on to that study as quickly as possible. And that's what they're working on, and that's where we're using AI. Equally, AI is not emotive. It can mimic emotion, but it's not human. And I think having human guardrails is absolutely a priority. And so all of our studies before they go live is that we will use AI to create the initial summary, but it will ultimately be a human that can edit this, change it, and sign it off. And one of the things that is really important to us is that we do have patient involvement in that sign-off. And that's why we've been growing out our team of ambassadors. And these are patients who work with us to look at these medical or these summaries that we're presenting and make sure they are fit for purpose for patients. And that's the human element.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. I think these days many people are turned off AI, especially in our industry.
Yeah.
I use AI as well, but I always am curious how other people use it and combine the human factor in it. So thank you for telling us your perspective.
Can I just add one thing to that? I think,
Yes.
To ignore AI in today's world is like ignoring getting on a plane to travel to the US. Yes, you can take a boat there. It'll take you longer, but you will still ultimately get there. But in a world where we are constantly evolving and there is a need to speed up to change things, using AI but doing it sensibly is a good approach. And the sensible option, as I see it, is to learn. It's a fledgling area, but is to learn from others that have more experience than you, and just to be open and dabble with it.
As you say, yeah, I totally agree. You can still write with paper and pen, but you won't get a lot of money for that, especially these days. Like if I would handwrite some email and send it as a letter, it's got to be slow. And yeah, we might not like that, but if you want to live your life in this world, then you have to keep up. It's just as simple.
Exactly. Our platform would not be where it is today if it wasn't for AI. So I thank AI for that, and Charlie and Ethan. But equally, it wouldn't have been the time for platforms like we're developing. There are others like us, and I, I'm one of those founders that is not. Yes, I'm competitive, but in the same way, patients should have choice of their trials. They should have choice in terms of the platforms they use. And there are others out there that may service one particular patient better than ours, or vice versa, whatever it happens to be. And we're able to do this because technology has moved on, and that is in part due to AI.
Yeah.
What Ava says, teacher surgeons to be more precise. Totally agree. If you use AI to remove the components of the job that actually could be done better by a machine, to allow you to focus on what you can do better and you are better skilled at, then you use it properly.
Or you even just do more. Like thanks to AI, you manage to for example, I keep hearing, or actually at the moment it's less, but AI will take all the translators' jobs. No, it won't. It will just change the job, and it will also allow more content to get translated and into more languages and at a faster time, so more people get access to information. That's at least the way I want to look at it. And
agree. I mean, translation, it's perfect that you say that. We use an AI tool for on-screen translation. So all of our studies, all of our assessments online translate to 45 different languages. Is it perfect? No. Would you be better at it? 100%. Do I get criticized because it's there? All the time. But, is it not better to have something that allows a patient to get a good understanding than to have nothing at all? And that's
right.
how I look at it.
Yeah, I absolutely understand you. I don't know if anybody else has to say something to that. I just see that Eva wrote, do you need experience in the different ethical groups, or are they just based on ethical aspects? So,
that's a big piece. So a big focus of ours is on equity, accessibility, and inclusiveness. And that is not just the common misconception that ethnic minorities don't take part in trials. Those from a lower socioeconomic standing do not take part in trials. There is a gender imbalance still within trials. And these platforms, ours and others, provide an opportunity for more populations to potentially participate in trials. And it's something that we're speaking to a number of sponsors about now. In fact, we're about to launch to work with Bart's Healthcare Trust on 2 cardiovascular programs where they're specifically looking at increasing the diversity, ethnic diversity, the socioeconomic or those of a lower socioeconomic standing, bringing them into studies and addressing some gender imbalance. Now they're using our tool because it gives a wider reach. And then with the translation tool, which I've already said is not perfect, but allows for people where English is not their native tongue to now participate in studies rather than they pass by them completely. So, but also, again, we should not have diversity for diversity's sake. Where diversity is needed or where it is feasible, we do that, but it should not slow down progress. If one particular condition like Tay-Sachs disease, I'm Jewish, affects Jewish people, don't go look for people who are not Jewish to take part in a trial, because you may find the odd one, but it'll take you forever to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are really good in time, good timing. What are the next big moves of pRxEngage? You said, I have a typo, sorry for that. You said that there is a lot of cool things coming. Tell us more about it. What can we expect?
Okay, so there's lots of things within the platform. The one piece is this proprietary set of assessments that look at mental fitness. Often we look at clinical trials in a very binary way. I will screen, I will enroll, and then I will turn up for my visits. But you don't really think about, between the enrollment and the completion of the study, what's happening in those visits, how much this stresses you out, how much impact this has on your home life, and so on. And so as a set of assessment. As I said, there's a number of cool things that the engineering team have done that will not be overly obvious to people, but we will have the smartest search for tools of this nature within a couple of months. So I'll put it on record. 25th of November is when this will launch, because they told me in terms of the sprint planning yesterday. And there's a lot of insights that you can gather that are not obvious to you and me when we're typing in and so on, but that we will be able to then help to better understand how people are engaging with the platform, where they're coming from, are there differences between different ethnic groups or geographies and so on. So there's a lot of work under the hood. We're working on an EHR algorithm as well, and method matching, use semantic search. There's a number of things on the horizon that we are working on, and this is not long horizon 2-3 years down the line. We've got a very full pipeline of development. So R&D is extremely important to us, as it is to a biotech and a pharma company. And it's not just launch a platform, watch there, and hope this works. There is an ongoing development, and a significant proportion of the limited budget that we have is put towards better R&D, making the system better. Ultimately, it comes down to these applications should function in any other way that your other applications function. In the way that you pick up your phone to use Uber or Deliveroo or any of the apps that you are used to using, clinical trial application should work in the same way. And that's what we're working on now.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I have a question from Miriam. How do you ensure you are not conveying incorrect information when relying solely in AI for those online versions?
So as I said, we're not relying solely on AI. We will take the information either from a patient information sheet and the inclusion-exclusion criteria, or we can take data from publicly accessible databases, and we will use AI to pass that information. But we have been very specific as to the information it is to collect. That information has been developed, or that algorithm has been developed with patients. We spoke to over 140 patients to put tweaked, refined over a period of time. But as I said, there is that final gatekeeper is a human who will read this and go, okay, well, that's complete nonsense, and send it back.
Right. Miriam, did that answer your question?
In a way, and thank you for the explanation. I'd love to see it, so I'll have a look. Thank you.
Fantastic. And anything you don't like, let me know, because that user testing and that user feedback is important to make sure that we are making a better tool for everyone.
No, I'm sure it works well for many languages. I'm just curious about smaller languages, lower demand languages, and so on. Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, then it's almost 6. We made it almost on the minute.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for your time and everybody who was here asking questions.
And thank you. I know you and I are going to be spending a bit more time together because we're doing some writing together.
Yes.
So just because we're a bit bored, but we'd write a book to help patients to understand clinical trials, but we think we're taking a slightly different angle to this. So more to come in the coming months.
Yes, we will let you guys know. It's going to be amazing, I think. It's just going to be amazing to learn so much from you, to work with someone who has so much experience in the field. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And thank you everyone for listening as well. Really appreciate your time. I know we're all busy. Reach out if there's anything I can help with. The one thing I do always finish my calls on is there some way that I can help you? And that's genuine. If there's something I can help you with, reach out.
Yeah, same here. If you have any questions, just let us know. And I will upload the talk if anybody wants to rehear it or like didn't understand some things, then you can just, as always, listen to it later on. And I will post that on LinkedIn as well.
And I will never look at it because I hate watching myself on screen.
I know, I get that. Well, have a good night, all of you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.